Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Timeline Astrology. This is Gary, and this is all about February 2026. We're looking at the sidereal transits for what I think is probably the most consequential month of the year. This is the real pivot. We have a solar eclipse occurring in sidereal Aquarius, and it changes everything. I would say all of the planets in one way or the other are involved in this eclipse coming up. And it's likely to change alliances, whether in your personal life, in terms of your goals and ambitions and what you're aligned with, or in the world, as we can see. Because, of course, eclipses themselves are just points in time, like a fulcrum of a wheel, showing the outer circumstances coming to center, aligning the sun, moon, the earth, and the lunar nodes for some sort of insight into the dynamics involved. But things don't necessarily have to happen on the eclipse day itself on the 17th of February. Then it moves outward again, like from center to the periphery as things continue to spin and change. And so it might feel more intense in one way as it spins into the center, but at the same time, there's a pivot and a central point could also show a stillness, and that can lead to insights. Whatever about the alliances that are forming and reforming and breaking apart and new alliances forming in the world, again, thinking about your own life. How am I aligning with my own objectives here? This is the key thing about an eclipse in Aquarius. But before we get to any of that, let's look at the other transits there because there's a lot going on in February. We're starting out with a full moon in Cancer. On the 1st of February, a full moon in Cancer opposite the Sun and all of those planets that have gathered with the Sun in combustion is asking us to get a balance between the inner and the outer, the more, I would say, fearful aspects of Capricorn when we can see what's happening in the world and the reformation of the world order, all of that, all of the big changes that are happening in the world out there. That's Capricorn. Now, it could also mean in your life and your world and what you're attempting to achieve in 2026, what you're aiming for, the goals and ambitions that you have, that's Capricorn. But that's a very out there kind of thing. It's like you're projecting your needs out there and creating some sort of scenario or situation or work situation or ambition or objective. And you're likely maybe also having made some New Year's resolutions, projecting that outwardly. I need to do this and I'm going to just go do it. No matter how I feel about it, that's Cancer on the opposite side. Capricorn is going to say, I'm just going to do it. Whatever I feel, I'm going to do it. So obviously, there's been a huge emphasis on doing it with all the planets, including Mars and Pluto, including Mercury and Venus, all together with the Sun in Capricorn. Huge emphasis there. This full moon on the 1st of February is asking us to find more balance in here and feel our feelings, whatever about what it is you set out to do, whatever about your ambitions and goals and objectives in life. This is a time to just feel what you're feeling. And with all of the changes that are happening in the world, also to draw into your kind of safety net as well, I would say, with the full moon in Cancer, wherever that might be, wherever you feel it, because Cancer is going to be in a different part of your chart than others. So wherever you feel Cancer, feel it and go there and find more balance in your life. That's the 1st of February. And then let's move it through the month then and look at how all of this pivots. First of all, we have Mercury move into Aquarius on the 3rd of February, and then on the 5th, we have Venus move in. So they're quite tightly bound up together and will be for quite a few weeks because of Mercury slowing down, stationing, going retrograde. Typically, Mercury will speed ahead of Venus and they will separate, but now they're going to move back together because of its retrograde from the end of February. So that's a whole other I'm going to get into now in a minute. But with both of them moving into Aquarius, we are now seeing this trigger already in terms of the themes of Aquarius. The sun will then move in by the 12th. It does so every year around the 12th into the star sign Aquarius. And this highlights another imbalance possible here between now Leo and Aquarius. And this imbalance will be quite extreme in one way, and again, also this pivot that happens in another way during the new moon on the 17th. So this is the new moon. For those that are watching on video, I can bring it back and show you the exact time of the new moon, which is at 4 degrees of sidereal Aquarius. And it is, depending on where you are, it will be around noon here where I am in Ireland. So this is an important time, obviously. This is a reset in terms of, again, all of our alliances and our goals and objectives and ambitions in life. And because this lunar mansion, where we see this new moon and eclipse, is called Dhaniṣṭhā, ruled by the elemental gods, is about all of the elements that we need to achieve our objectives. This is why I call it the allied one and why it's instigating this and has been for some time now, leading to this reformation, this breaking apart of certain alliances and forming of new alliances. We can see it happening already. Again, thinking about that in your own life in terms of this area of your chart, not just generally how Aquarius is felt in the world, which is we can see quite obviously in what's happening in this new world order that's being formed, but also personally for you, where Aquarius is and how you're having to think about your alliances, whatever it is. It could be a very private thing for you that nobody else can see. It could be very public, depending. So this new moon, this annular solar eclipse, is a reset. And as I mentioned, all of the planets in one way or the other are involved in this eclipse. First of all, we have Mars, which is now almost exactly exalted by degree, very powerful throughout the month of February on one side, also with Pluto. And then on the other side, we have the most consequential, in a way, apart from this eclipse, aspect of the astrology of 2026, and that is the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, 6 degrees of sidereal Pisces. And so this is the most consequential in a way, combined with this eclipse. This is why this eclipse is the most consequential time of the year. So all of those planets hemming in this new moon and eclipse with Venus conjunct the North Node of the moon almost exactly. Mercury is also involved. And all of those planets, Saturn and Mars especially, hemming in this new moon. It's quite a tense environment. It's like been stuck between a rock and a hard place kind of thing. Then we have an exact square from this new moon to Uranus, almost exact within a degree. Uranus is at 3 degrees of sidereal Taurus. And then Jupiter is aspecting this new moon with the North Node Rahu aspecting Jupiter back. Jupiter itself is in Mercury's sign, and Mercury is involved in this eclipse by being in the same sign. So every single planet is involved in this shakeup of the world order. Now, it also could happen in areas such as technology, of course, as we can see with Aquarius and all of the AI and all of that. But I think the most obvious thing to say about Dhaniṣṭhā and a eclipse here is about reforming of alliances, breaking apart of certain alliances and reforming or forming others, maybe others that we have never seen before in our modern era. And indeed, we can see that already. We saw that the EU and India have agreed after decades of negotiation this trade deal. That's a good example of this kind of forming new alliances. So again, thinking about it in your own life, it's important to understand where this is happening, what Aquarius is for you, where in your chart it lands. So that's such an important time. I want to mention also, though, that the exact conjunction of Saturn Neptune at this time and leading up to their very exact conjunction, which is on the 20th of February when the moon joins them also. This is where, despite all of these new alliances, it's not clear. You know, it's kind of like you make an agreement with somebody, but you don't really know what their motives are, and you're not really sure if it's the right thing. Saturn conjunct Neptune is eroding so many institutions and structures in our life, and quite literally also in terms of the world, which we'll also likely see during this eclipse around the 17th of February and into the end of February, as I'll show you when it gets triggered by Mars, where it could be a violent eruption of some kind, like an earthquake and ensuing tsunami, for example, because that's Saturn Neptune. We've seen a lot of these floods, and you might say, well, it's winter, or, duh. But this is more extreme, I would say, even more extreme than we had of late. in terms of flooding around the world, in terms of things dissolving. So it's not just figurative in terms of the world order, it's also quite literal in terms of shorelines being changed forevermore because of massive storms. The last time we had an exact conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in sidereal Pisces was in 1703. And if you look up your history, then this is a pivotal time in terms of big floods and storms. A massive storm that occurred in the UK in 1703 killed many people and it was like unprecedented. And I don't think it's happened like that since. I'm not saying it's going to happen this time. I hope it doesn't. But this kind of astrology doesn't come around very often. And we're likely to see some major catastrophic event in some shape or form, whether it's a storm, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's, a tsunami even, whatever it might be. As the world order is changing, this is also part of that change. So that's the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. After this, I think it will be a case of looking back, at least in history, pre and post this conjunction in 2026. The last time they came together was in 1989, and that was a huge pivot in the world and in the world order when the Berlin Wall fell, and Saturn literally representing the wall. This time it's in Pisces where there are very unclear boundaries anyway already. And so it's a lot more confusing, I would say, than previously. And we don't know what's true and we don't know who to believe. And again, with the AI drive in terms of all of these technologies that are making us unsure about if things are true or not, with all these deep fakes and AI content being, pushed out more and more and more. It's kind of like where we've reached saturation point essentially with the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Pisces, and we are done with it. And unfortunately, it's not done with us yet. We have to accept that while this is a conjunction and there's going to be a post experience of this, it's still going to linger for a long time because they're going to slowly start to separate. It's not going to happen overnight. But in essence, though, we are over it. We've reached peak AI slop, for example, or we've reached peak confusion states and kind of disillusionment, and we're wanting something else. And that's really what the pivot of February is all about. And again, tying that in with the eclipse in Aquarius is about pivoting there in terms of what are we aligning with now? If we don't want this anymore, what do we want? So if we move it into the end of the month, then we see Mars moving into Aquarius, which is consequential by the 23rd of February, and will conjoin the eclipse degree by the very last day of February on the 28th. And before then, on the 26th, we have Mercury stationed to go retrograde. So this is, I would say, even more consequential in a way than the eclipse day itself, in a way, because it's when planets transit the eclipse degree that we see events happen. So this period with Mercury stationing and conjoining Venus and the Sun itself conjoining the North Node of the Moon Rahu and Mars triggering the eclipse degree, all within Aquarius with this ongoing Saturn Neptune conjunction, all of that to me suggests that this is a major pivot and some action or some event taking place that changes the game. So a lot of things by the end of February are likely to feel like they're hanging in the air because of the massive change or the disruption or the massive catastrophe even that has occurred. And it likely won't feel like it's resolved in a way until the end of March, in fact, because Mercury is going to continue to retrograde in Aquarius until March 21st. And at least until after March 3rd, which I'll show you here and talk about in this podcast, although this is getting into March, because on March 3rd, that's the second eclipse opposite in Leo. And so this resolves some of the things that have been shaken up, that have been brought up in our awareness or in events in our life around the Aquarius themes, and resolves some of those or ends some things or sacrifices someone or some things in Leo. Now, this highlights again the extreme division between the lunar nodes in Aquarius and Leo, which means the extreme division between leaders, Leo, and people rising up against those leaders in Aquarius. And all of these grassroots movements that we're seeing more and more around the world. Minneapolis is a good example of this, where a lot of local people are banding together and rising up against these governments who are coming in and literally killing people But we can see it all over the world, like in Iran. All of these places are showing these extreme divisions between Leo, the leaders, and Aquarius, the people in revolt, and pushing back against them. Ketu, the South Node, removes things and may even remove leaders. But certainly, leaders are going to have to sort of step it back a lot with this eclipse in Leo on the 3rd of March. And again, the grassroots movements will continue with Rahu, the North Node in Aquarius, until the end of the year. And this is a storyline that's going to intensify at different times. And February, March is when it intensifies in a big way. It will intensify again in August when we see the next round of eclipses. But for now, February, March is consequential. And there are many personal benefits to all of these transits, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like all of this is just so dire and consequential in big ways in the world and we can't do anything about it. That's in one way true. But you have a personal astrology that may align with this a lot easier than what's happening in the world. And generally, what we see in the world is the most exaggerated form of it. Then an individual who, like yourself, listening to this is more conscious and aware of what's happening and can work with it more intentionally. Doesn't mean you don't get triggered by all of this because it's likely to trigger you and likely to create changes in your life. And why the nodes of the moon, especially, and why the eclipses show what people call more fated events is simply because they're not visible. They're eclipses, after all, they're shadows. And so it brings things out of the shadows and can oftentimes be surprising, at least, if not shocking. Rahu can often be shocking. So I would say for you to pivot here means to again understand where your alliances are and what you need to sacrifice in order for you to align with your long-term objective. That's the key point about February and about 2026 in general. So I hope that's been of help, everyone. If you want to go deeper with this astrology, I've written a more in-depth report for patrons over at patreon.com/timeline astrology. If you want to join a discussion about these transits coming up on February 1st, we meet at 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the closest Sunday to the beginning of the month, every month, and discuss the transits. Again, go to patreon.com/timeline astrology or go to timelineastrology.com and find the links there. Thank you so much for listening to this all the way through. Please hit the like button wherever you listen or watch this, and I wish you all the best. Until next time.